Welcome back. All right, so we do have in our presence Dr. Faith B. Israel, Secretary of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. And of course, we are going to speak about 1 year in office, obviously, and of course. But amidst that, good morning and welcome. Merry Christmas to you.
Good morning. Thank you. Merry Christmas to all listening, all viewing. It's wonderful being here. What is it? Coming to the end of 2022. We survived.
Yeah. We survived.
We survived, and we have to be thankful.
Very good. All right. Well, there are some issues you wanted to clear up given the presence of should we say the wedge in the PDP, given the dispute and the bacchanal, we call it that. Watson Duke made some statement yesterday. You want to speak to maybe one or two of them, the query you want to respond to, and then we get into 1 year in office.
Certainly. I thought it... Let me step back a little bit. After listening to the interview yesterday, I had to ask myself, I wonder how many other conversations that we've had with the goodly gentleman that went exactly like the one you had yesterday. And let me explain why. You know, there are times that you can lie by just not telling the truth. And there are times that you can, as they say, lie by omission. And then there are those people who are good at doing it by technicality. So technically, what was said is not necessarily untrue, but when you hear the rest of the technicality is... So one of the things that was asked yesterday, and I guess it may have been the way you framed the question, did you want to take away the query or want to run the query? And the answer was no, I didn't want to run the query. But this is how Executive Council works. You bring a note to the Executive Council that says whatever you want it to say, and then the Executive Council agrees. A note did come to the Executive Council asking the Executive Council to agree with the query being moved from the Division of Works to the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary. So, all you asked the question wrong. It was just a technical way of saying, no, I didn't ask to run it. But when you look at the fine print, when you look at the technicality, that is actually what happened. And I actually spent yesterday asking myself, really, I wonder how many other conversations happened like that, where we got a certain impression because of how the question was asked or how the conversation went, when in fact that may not have really been the actual truth when you look at the bigger picture.
Okay. Another untruth you want to address, and that has to do with the...
Yeah, no, I keep hearing, and I was also very, very disappointed with the chairman as well, because I keep hearing this story being repeated about Farley telling Watson, if you here, I can't be here too. And you know, they say it as if our chief sec was trying to be malicious or was trying to take away the man party from him and that kind of thing. Again, it has to do with context, right? Now, this really did happen in 2020. You all remember what happened in 2020?
Vaguely.
2020 was when we had the general election.
Right, okay.
Remember the general election?
Course, yes.
Right. Remember the day or 2 days before the general election, what happened? In Crown Point? The stink and dirty statement.
Okay.
Remember that?
Yes.
We all remember that. Remember shortly after that, everyone, all of Tobago was in an uproar. And Farley came out and gave an apology.
Yes, I remember that.
And remember, after that apology, the gentleman's response was, nobody do apologize for me. All you do apologize for me. I ain't say sorry, nothing like that. Now, that was late 2020, and we knew we were going into the THA election for January 2021. And the conversation was, since we have such differing philosophies about something as simple as this, it would be difficult for both of us to be on the same platform, to be on the same thing going forward, because You say one thing, I say sorry, you tell the world, I can't say sorry for you. I mean, can we really go forward and say to Tobago that we are on the same team after something like this happened? And that was the context to that conversation happening. Now again, this was an internal National Executive Council meeting that happened where we were there. And I was one of them who said, Ole is big people. We are big people. We can resolve this. Both of you, it was a three-hour. That's, do this thing since when? We can move past this and we can work together to get towards January 2021 and beyond. And the rest of the team was the same way. Let us not let something like this mash up the whole thing for, this is something we can move beyond. So when you hear the story being related as Farley come and say, if you on the ticket, I ain't going to be on the ticket too, and the whole executive voted against it and all of that. Again, when you look at context, you can now understand where that conversation came from and why that conversation happened.
Dr. Faith, I want to add just some more context. For those who don't know, but you publicly would have stated that you would have been approached to join the PDP around 2015 on several occasions, and of course accepted and competed and representing the Bell Garden. And
it was Goodwood Bell Garden at that time.
Yes, and you lost by 5 seats, but still served as a minority councillor, and was part of the original team. Of course, Mr. Duke, Farley Augustine, yourself, and here we are today in 2022, at the latter half of 2022, and well, 1 year in office. But your overview, because looking at the entire situation, being a founding member, for much of a better word, your overview on the situation, and then of course we dive right into 1 year in office. So,
my overview is that, one, I actually say to people, I am not a founding member. I was not a founding member.
Okay.
I was asked and I joined the team in 2016, just before the 2017 election. As a matter of fact, most people would remember my voice before they even know my face, because I was the one, when you were on another frequency, having those morning conversations every morning, leaving my house in Bell Garden, coming down to Crown Point to have those conversations. But I would actually say I was not a founding member. I was not there when the name of the party was created. I was not there when the initial draft of the constitution was done. But you know what is funny about all of that? The individuals who were there, the individuals who I classify them as real hardcore foundation PDP, they claim that when the name came up, you know who wasn't there at the meeting? When the first draft of the constitution came up, who wasn't at the meeting either? But here we are.
All right, so I guess we clear the air on that so we could move on. All right? So let's go into, obviously, COVID-19, but it tested the Division of Health. And where are we now with COVID-19? Obviously, we have come out of the darkness. We are into a little light. However, there's still some cautions that we got to take. Just a backdrop as to where we came from under your stewardship. And, of course, you did a fantastic job leading us into where we are now.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I would say COVID-19 did a number on all of us. Last year, this time, and imagine such a difference a year could make. Last year, this time, I would wake up every morning and read the reports, and it would include the names and addresses and entire situations of the 4 people who died yesterday, or the 5 people who died yesterday. As a matter of fact, I would always say that I think those reports were probably the hardest part of this year, because most people would just get up and see the daily report that says 3 people died or so. I would know their names and their family members and that kind of thing, and that was a really difficult process to go through. But where we are now, as you see, we have started, we don't even do the daily reports anymore. We'll do the weekly reports, and as a matter of fact, I am not even sure we still need to do the weekly reports. The numbers are so small. We are at the point where it's no longer a pandemic. It's not even an endemic anymore. not necessarily because people are getting infected, but because the illness, quote unquote, associated with having COVID-19 is not as rigorous. So most people may be having it and not even going to get tested. So the official numbers are very, very low. So we are at that point where it's almost like everything else. What we need to be conscious of, though, is we actually are having people get very ill from the flu. That is happening, and that people need to be conscious of. The other thing, let me say quickly, it's because it's a public health thing. I don't know if you've noticed quite a bit for the last couple weeks, people have been getting vomiting and diarrhea.
Yes.
Yes, so that is because that there is actually a norovirus that is going around, and it is because people are again easing up on the restrictions, so they're not washing their hands as much. But the thing that you're getting from not washing your hand is not the COVID, but is this other virus. So people, we are really encouraging. My county medical officer of health and the entire team at public health have actually been again going in and working with the hoteliers and the food places and so forth to remind them, you need to wash your hands a little better. A lot of the foods, for example, that we may have that may have been in flood areas, that is also a critical part of what may be causing some of these diarrheas and vomiting that we're seeing. So we still need to be cautious of those
Let's
issues.
take a quick break. When we come back, we continue our conversation. See you then. All right, welcome back, and of course I'm going to pass by Dr. Faith for some rum punch and punch a creme. All right, but anyway, before that, of course, we are speaking with the Secretary of Health, Dr. Faith B. Israel. She is Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, and also Deputy Chief Secretary. All right, so we're going to finish the health issue, and then we'll come to your new portfolio. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about that. But we continue with the year in review, more or less, 1 year in office. What has been mostly, we know COVID-19 had its challenges, but there are other challenges. And so just give us an overview as to what was some of the most challenging part of the role as Secretary of Health.
I think the most challenging thing for me was recognizing that I cannot do everything in terms of everything that needs to be done to move a policy to action. So, example, a policy decision that says this is what we are going to do, whatever it is. That leaves my office, but then for it to be actioned, it means the administrator needs to do what he or she needs to do. It means if a check needs to be cut, an accounting person has to do what they need to do. If something needs to be procured, if something needs to be built, the procurement people, they need to do what they need to do. And I cannot hold all of their hands. As a matter of fact, we have no procurement. We're not involved in the whole procurement stuff at all, really. So if something is in procurement and it's sitting there waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I am there wondering or thinking or assuming that it already happened, only to realize that it may have been on somebody's desk for a little while. And I think that understanding that process and learning how we can influence that process to make it work better, really I think has been the most difficult part of the journey for me. And I hear all of my other colleagues talking about it, because we would make decisions, we would make public pronouncements, and then it is only, for example, after somebody gets on TV and says we ain't get paid, we were like, but wait, but that was several weeks ago, how come you ain't get paid? That kind of thing. So I think that was probably the most difficult.
All right, one of the things before we go further is the whole question of the TRHA board to be announced, and we are still waiting. And of course, where is that? Are we, of course, it has to be, I see you twiddling your fingers, but clearly, the last time we spoke.
Yeah, because it's the same thing. It's the same situation. We've done our part. As a matter of fact, I spoke to the Office of the President, and this is only, remember, the TRHA board needs to be installed they need to get the instruments by the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So we did our Executive Council thing approving. We understand that the Cabinet, because we actually saw notes saying that the Cabinet passed it. I spoke to the Office of the President this week, and they are still waiting for the official instruments to come from maybe Ministry of Legal Affairs or Attorney General or one of those to make sure that the instrument is correct. Again, we are sitting here. It is not something that I can go to the person's desk and say, what's happening, you know?
Okay. And with regards to social protection and wellness, is there restructuring in terms of the services provided?
There is there's several things that are being restructured. The entire Department of Social Protection is being restructured. So we are going through the final stages of approving what the new structure would look like. I actually start all of the meetings with Social Protection where I speak about restructuring, where I tell all of them, nobody going home, nobody getting sent home, nobody's getting fired or anything like that. What we are doing is just aligning the units for them to make better sense. Working together and different management and that kind of thing. That's what we're talking about. We've made several changes to policy. So for example, we now have a clearer definition of what an emergency situation is and the steps that it takes to get the support if the person has an emergency situation. We've also changed the policy as it relates to the food card, the emergency food cards that we have at the division. These are the green food cards. Remember, those were the ones that were in finance. And as soon as the Chief Secretary for Finance, 𝗟𝗘𝗙𝗧𝗘𝗗 Augustine, got there, he said, there's no reason for these food cards to be by me. And he literally sent over the people and the cards to, to our division, literally. Put them out, say, Faith, you find place for them, that is where they need to be. We've changed the policy because what those cards are $500 cards, preloaded cards. What we've done is we've said that instead of you getting the card for a month and then having to reapply a month later, if you still need it, we would give you it for 3 months. And then after the 3 months, then you can reapply if you still need it. And then depending on the size of your family, you may get 1 card or 2 cards or even 3 cards if you have a larger family. So those are some of the policy shifts that we've made because we just thought the people needed the service to be a little bit more efficient than it was. So those are just some of the changes that we made during the year.
Let's go to one of the trying times, I must say, in your office. And of course, the statement that you made on Facebook, well, it eased me up now on a weekend. Obviously, you got a lot of flack for that. That have been one of the, if you want to call it a blemish on your portfolio, in your role as Secretary of Health. Just respond to that publicly first time. You made an apology, however, responding to that and how you felt now that you made the statement and you had to respond.
You know, I actually think that everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. I said publicly that I should not have posted it, and it is something that I should not have posted. I should have been able to hold that feeling and not necessarily express it on Facebook the way that I did. What I've recognized, though, is that a lot of people have actually been coming up to me and saying, but we're glad you said it because you expressed something that many of us are afraid to express, meaning that people are tired. And when people are tired, they don't function at the best of their capacity. And I have admitted that. I am tired. Weekends are the few times that you would think we have time to ourselves, but we don't. Most of the people who know me, they would see me Saturday morning bright and early on some walk somewhere because it's all just part of. So the one morning that I am home that I kind of want to sleep, it was really, really upsetting at that time to get the call about something that at that specific time I can't fix. So I don't know that I would not call it a blemish. I am human. I have always said to people that I am a different kind of politician. I am not the kind of politician that, you know, when you hear other people talk, they would get married just before the election because having the family, having the husband and wife and 2 children is the image that a politician should have. They would have a whole makeover. People would give them speeches and this is what you say. And the reality is the person who you think you are voting for is not the person because they've created this image of themselves. I have never created an image of myself that is not real. What you get from me is who I am. I am an introvert. A lot of people don't recognize that. A lot of people also don't recognize that because I am such an introvert, whenever I do public engagements, it actually takes a lot out of me. And then I have to go back into my little corner to recharge. And people need to recognize that that is who we are, human beings.
Okay, and you would have sworn in as Deputy Chief Secretary in September. Wow. Yes, I think it's September, yes. So September, just a few months, just an overview of that portfolio thus far and what is to come for 2023 and beyond?
So what is to come in that portfolio for 2023 and beyond? I will actually allow the Chief Sec to make that announcement, because there is an announcement that's going to be made.
Okay.
Are we going to be shocked by it?
So, you know, the chief, when he made the comment, he basically said a couple little shifts is what was said, and that is what we're sticking with. So don't expect a whole reshuffle where people, you know, change divisions and that kind of thing, unless so it won't be a whole big shake-up. No. What we are doing is really looking at what needs to happen, looking at my portfolio as the secretary with responsibility for health. I really don't know that any of the other secretaries want that one. You know, and thank you. And because of that, areas pertaining to, for example, dealing with foreign direct investment, where you may have to travel a lot to foreign areas, that may not be the best thing for me to do given my responsibilities at health. So those are the kinds of internal discussions that we are having, and the Chief Sec will make an announcement about what that really means going into 2020.
The indications you are giving us is that there's a possibility that you may not be the Chief Secretary after in 2023 going on.
The Deputy Chief Secretary. So remember. So
you may not. So you're saying that to us?
I am not saying that. But remember, before our tenure, our grouping was the first where the Deputy Chief Secretary had a specific functions separate from another division. Remember when, I think it was Joel Jack was one of the last Deputy Chief Secretaries. He was also Secretary for Finance, and Deputy Chief Secretary was just an add-on to that. But what we did was, because again, and we have to be we were being practical. We had so many people who won the elections. We have so many people who were secretaries, who we could have placed as secretaries because we had all of these seats and that kind of thing. We decided that at that time it would have been prudent to have the diasporic relations, foreign direct investment, autonomy, and those were the areas that were placed specifically under the office of the Deputy Chief Secretary, because we had those things that are so critical to our functioning. And the thinking at that time was that because we had somebody who had such links to Trinidad and so forth, that would have made the best sense to use the goodly gentleman in that regard, because that was those were larger areas that would then affect development in Tobago. Maybe a question that needs to be asked is, in that time between December and September, how much of that did that goodly gentleman actually do?
Okay.
Interesting. And what about the office of the Deputy Chief Secretary?
So in Trinidad, the building is there, and that is part of us building out as well. So we will actually have individuals in those buildings. It is not populated at this point just yet, but we will have people in those buildings. We will have the Tobago desk, for want of a better word, Tobago embassy, and those things will be coming out of that office as well in Trinidad coming up.
All right, but staying with health, obviously we're going to a few minutes before we get out of here. But let's talk about projections for 2023 in your division as health, because there's where you're going to stay. That's for sure. And of course, let's speak to us as to projections going forward.
Certainly. So for the TRHA, we are definitely going to be beefing up our diagnostic capacity. We're looking at getting more, the X-ray machines and the MRIs and the CT scans, and looking at where those are, getting additional ambulances. Somehow for the first 2-3 months, at least 2 or 3 of our ambulances got into accidents and all sorts of story going down the road. It was really, really crazy what's happening there. We also want to beef up the primary care and the wellness component of primary care and so forth. At social protection, again, because we've now moved into this newer space where we have more space and so forth, we are going to build out that new department of social protection, which will include having more social workers, having more therapeutic counselors, and all of them are kind of in the same space so that we are working together. So from the side of social protection, you should actually get better service faster because we are building out the capacity there. As it relates to public health, I'm so excited about public health because we're actually working on getting 2 labs created. First deals with vector, so an entomology lab, a lab where we could go and look at the different mosquitoes and that kind of stuff. With COVID, everybody forgot everything else, but now that COVID is going away, we're realizing that everything else is coming back. And we also also want to have a space where we can do food and water testing. So a lot of the samples, if we go into a restaurant or whatever and we need to take samples, right now we don't have the capacity to test that in Tobago. We have to send it to Trinidad. So rolling out a lab where we can work together to test that in Tobago, that's another project we are hoping to do.
I'll give you this opportunity to send greetings to your constituency and all of Tobago, Secretary of Health.
Certainly. So to the people of Bell Garden, Glamorgan specifically, to the entire Tobago, to the people within my division, because they are the hardest working at the Tobago Regional Health Authority. Again, the hardest working people, I say so. I want to say thank you. Thank you for all of your work, all of your commitment, or everything that you have done over the last a year or so working with me to get us to this point. And as I said yesterday, I want to wish each and every one of you a Merry, Merry, Merry Christmas and the most prosperous 2023.
Very good. And to you and yours, all the best to you, Dr. Faith, and continue to do your good work. We got to go.
Of course, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it was a pleasure having you with us this morning. But today's the best day in the year. Every day should be the best day in the year. In fact, my name is Jumani Juby Cox. Have a wonderful day.
All right, so tomorrow we'll have our Christmas Eve celebrations on Rise and Shine. Of course, so look out for Santa.
Yeah. Going outdoors, but you'll be right here.
Exactly. All right, with that, embrace the urgency of today. For tomorrow is a mystery. Going to be saying so long.
And thanks we say to you. The car, the beside of the blaster, I will drink straight from the bowl.